Hey guys, hey, it's Matthew. um, this is the second video for Project 2 in Web Design 2, where you should be making some progress or beginning the thought process of your web portfolio that we'll be doing 5 weeks. But of course, we're going to be doing the progress incrementally. And so for each submission, you should have made a little bit more progress, a little bit more progress, with the goal of having your completed HTML template, I guess, transitioned into your voice at the end of 5 weeks. And through that process, I'm also going to be um, kind of submitting some videos where I'm showing you some helpful things that I think are just kind of valuable or or inspiring. And in the last video, I was talking about hosting. Okay. And so what I've done is what you're looking at right now with this, I know my desktop is a little bit cluttered right now. Apologies. Um, but this right here, I use this program called Fetch. But there are lots of, it's called FTP, File Transfer Protocol. And you can find free FTP applications online. Somehow I ended up coming across this program called Fetch, which was somehow in my mind more closely associated um, with a Mac machine, an Apple machine, rather than a PC. But I guarantee you, if you just type FTP or File Transfer Protocol into your Google search bar, a lot of options are going to come up. Some of them paid. I actually paid for the Fetch software. I think I paid $5 for a lifetime membership or something very minuscule. And obviously it's a web developer or someone who's trying to make a little bit of money. I'm not sure if this guy's living in a small apartment or maybe he's living in Hawaii in a big mansion because everyone is buying Fetch, but nonetheless, it's worked for me. So file transfer protocol gives you access to your hosting. And so immediately when you log into your hosting, you're going to see a lot of files that may eventually become a little bit more familiar to you. This one is very important. It's called the HTA or the htaccess um, file. And essentially, this is the location where you can modify redirects. You can take care of 404 errors. And I know that that may be jargon for the time being, but as you progress down this web journey, the htaccess file will become more familiar to you. It's not something that you need to prioritize right now, but it's just something that I'm putting on the table for you to just kind of log away, I guess, for a future date. Um, here's a folder for the SSL certificate. And a lot of this stuff, honestly, you don't need to worry about because it's sort of back-end nitty-gritty logistics that if you call your hosting provider, they're going to be able to help you with. They do have technicians, and there is a point where they're willing to help you. So just, yeah, keep that in mind. The location where things are going to be visible to the viewer or to the public is literally in this folder, and it's always like this. It's called public_HTML. So right when I walk into the door of my hosting, this is what I'm going to see. But if I want to see my actual website, I have to double click into public_HTML. And so here we are, um, just kind of taking a look at the back end. That's all we're doing. I'm not going to change anything. I'm just giving you guys a tour to possibly inspire you. Here's another htaccess file where you can modify redirects and so forth. So again, those are really important. This is not a static HTML website that I am personally running. It is a WordPress site, which is PHP based. And really the best way that I can describe why a CMS is essentially the eventual place where you're going. And I'm going to tell you, I guess, provide a metaphor or an analogy, but an anecdote, one of those descriptive words. Um, but if you're running an HTML site that is static, if you make one change to that template, so for example, the menu that you're going to be modifying for your HTML website, if you make one change on one of your HTML pages, you have to actually open up all of those other HTML pages and implement that exact change on all of your files. And the reason being is because you want consistency. You can't change the name of a menu item on just one HTML file. You have to change it on all of them. And so if you're working with a very large website, that can be an extreme task. That can take quite a bit of time. What PHP does is it essentially it allows you to make a change in one location regarding the template, and you can make global changes across your website. So in other words, uh, I guess the language is kind of similar but different. So in HTML land, we call these things divs, D-I-V. You guys should be familiar with that at this point. Well, in a CMS, content management system land, we refer to some of those divs as quote unquote modules. And those modules reappear over and over and over again on pages that you request those modules to appear on. So for example, there's a menu module that you would update only once, and that one instance of that module would reappear on all of those other pages that you've created if you request for it to do so. So it's just it's basically a shortcut. It's less work. And that's what the PHP database allows to happen. So that's sort of just kind of painting a picture as far as the advantage of eventually, after this course, and you've got your hosting set up and you're comfortable with your HTML site, eventually you're going to make another hop to the next lily pad, and the next lily pad is going to be a CMS. And I would strongly advise that it is WordPress, because there are a lot of different CMSs that are in development out there. But the truth is, the WordPress CMS is the most advanced because everyone is using it. In fact, if you Google some of the data for the platform, the quote unquote platforms that websites are based on, um, it's WordPress. It's like 95% or something absurd. So obviously a lot of development technology and knowledge is going into WordPress to keep it up to date and keep it up to speed, because things change quite often. At a later date, I will walk you through the back end of my site, which is a WordPress site, just to give you a glimpse of what you could possibly do down the road. I don't want to do that quite yet because I want you to be focused on creating your HTML template website, because that is a good beginning to your journey, to your web portfolio journey. But I guarantee you, I mean, really the journey doesn't end, because you're always finding a new template. It's always, the technology just changes a lot. But one thing that doesn't change, and I will remind you, just to give you a little bit of confidence as far as like what you've learned and what you continue to learn, HTML doesn't go anywhere. HTML is here to stay. I use HTML on my individual pages to map out images, to map out text links, navigation, very simple things. But what I'm doing is I'm using HTML within these WordPress pages that are quote unquote PHP based. So essentially the HTML is now wrapped by PHP, which makes managing a site a lot easier. Okay, so I've kind of gone down that road again and a bit, excuse me. And the next place I want to go is I just want to continue showing you, like, this is my WordPress site right here. This, I was telling you earlier in a different video, you can have multiple sites. This is a folder that I have actually, so I know this is like the base of my hosting. And then you see all this other sort of extraneous information around this folder called Elements Principles. Well, all of that is my personal site that is directing to matthewbollinger.com. But this particular folder is holding a completely separate WordPress site. And so remember I was mentioning you can have multiple sites being hosted by Bluehost or whatever hosting company you choose. Well, that's how you do it, but you might have to call a technician to kind of help you. And again, they have good technical service and you will have to call them occasionally to get help. So usually you would see an index as index.html, but in this particular circumstance, with a WordPress CMS, it is called an index dot. It's not a .html file; it's a PHP file. Same principle though. That's my home base. That's my home page right there. So that's the first place that the browser is going to look, and from there it's going to all these other assets and locations. The truth is, you don't need to know every single nut and bolt that's going on with a WordPress site, but it's just nice to know that an index file exists as a PHP formatted document instead of an HTML formatted document in a CMS as compared to a static HTML site. So again, some of that information that you've learned kind of repeating itself here. The WordPress admin basically means the interface. When you go to the back end of the site, which I'm not going to show you today, it's the interface for when you're moving things around and managing content and blah, 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 doing all that business. I think what's really kind of important for me is WP-content. So that's content. And all of these themes are a little bit different because they're being developed uniquely by different development or marketing firms. This particular theme that I'm using is from rockettheme.com, and I've had really good luck with those guys. You can buy a WordPress theme from those folks for like 25 or 50 bucks, and it's worth it. You know what? I mean, these guys put a lot of work and time and effort into these things, so I feel like they should be reimbursed. So yeah, I mean, I purchased this theme and I did pretty much what I was asking you guys to do in this circumstance, where I was saying, hey, dive around and look at some of these different templates and find one that works for you. Well, I did that, except I did it with a WordPress theme. So if I double click into content, let's see, there's a folder called themes. Double click into there. And this index, remember, these are modules that kind of repeat over and over again, right? And I don't know the nuts and bolts of how WordPress works. If I did, I'd probably, I don't know, be living in North California in a San Francisco mansion or something. But I'm not quite there yet, folks. So I'm just using the tools that are being provided. I'm just kind of following the breadcrumbs. But see that's my theme folder right there, okay? RT_Fluent. Rocket theme, Fluent. A lot of different things happening here. So this is my, I guess, diving deeper into a WordPress system. This is my actual website. There's the 404. What else is going on here? If you want to have the kind of website where you're having dialogue and comments occur, I'm not doing that, but you can do that in WordPress. And some of those things I'm just not using. The footer, okay, right? I thought I saw index here somewhere. Where did it go? I guess it disappeared. Here's a style.css. I mean, this is, there's that index I was mentioning. Anyway, I end up going into this folder quite often because that's the images folder. So you can double click. And sometimes, a theme comes equipped with all these preloaded sort of temporary images. So you kind of have to go into a WordPress site and dive around a little bit to kind of familiarize yourself with things, but also to find important just assets that you're going to maybe even extract from the website. You bring them out, you kind of reverse engineer the website a little bit. Like, for example, if you had a front page, like every website does, usually those front pages have some kind of an image carousel. And so you would want to try to find the slideshow images and maybe download those images, right? So I'm just going to put this one right there. I'm just dragging it off. And look at this. This is the original. Just going to open it in Photoshop really quick. That there is the original sample image that came with my template. And what I did was I extracted all of those images, and then I knew it was a slider image, and that's why there's that really kind of wonky looking S there. And then I wanted to put S1 because that's slider image 1. Why am I doing this? Well, I would drag all these images off of the template, modify them so I would know what was what, and then I would put them back into place so that I would kind of just know where all these images were situated within my website context, so I could go in and I could kind of change things. So it was just essentially I was setting up breadcrumbs for myself so I could reverse engineer the website with my own content. And I'm telling you that because that move might be useful with this context as well. So for example, the HTML template context, that's what I'm referring to. So if I go to downloads, I think I was showing you guys this on the previous video. Here is the HTML5 template. There is an images folder. And again, there are, the images are going to be easier to find here. You have to kind of like dive deep in a WordPress site or a CMS site, but they're pretty easy to find here. But I'll tell you, this is really valuable because you might want to modify these images somehow if they're, for example, because you have to know which is which. It's pretty clear here because this image is specific, but when I was looking at this site, they all had this generic kind of background. Either way, you need to sort of extract these images or understand them, because sometimes the website is designed to hold an image that is a particular size, right? And so you can actually use Photoshop, or you can, and I think you can probably find online photo programs, but you can see it's 72 DPI, and it's telling me how many inches, but here are the dimensions right here, 1600 by 1050. So if you wanted to replace this image with something, that means that you would have to put it like in a sleight of hand manner, sort of replace it with an identical image with identical dimensions back into the same folder. If you change the file name, if you do all that stuff, you're going to break the website, and so you're going to have to fix it and kind of repair things. But I'm just kind of giving you some tips as far as modifying this HTML template website, where you can go in and you can grab these images, you can understand those images, and then replace them with your own images. And again, I think that statement, reverse engineering, is really valuable in this context for where we're going with the HTML template. You're going to reverse engineer and understand what's going on the back end, so you can sort of make things your own. So that's that. I also wanted to show you guys something else, and it's very, very valuable. It's something that's necessary that you do almost kind of before you even start modifying any nitty-gritty info on your template. You need a snapshot of your own website. You can actually have a website very well planned before you even touch HTML or anything of that nature. I'm going to show you how. It has to do with the page that I'm going to just bring this up for you. I think it was on, the Project One PDF, and I didn't talk about it during the last video because we had a lot of information. But this table right here, web architecture table, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm showing you how you can start doing or creating some SEO strategy for pages and URL paths and all of this. It's so important to figure out right now. And I know it may not seem important, but just hear me out. You want people to be able to find you and find your work online. There are many things that drive that traffic. One of them is SEO, search engine optimization, and those rules are constantly changing, which is why on the next page of this PDF, I'm in a subtle way indicating that you need to do your research for Google SEO trends for a specific year, because these trends and these rules change over time. Google SEO 2021, and then all these articles are going to pop up. And basically, because you're a web designer, you need to be familiar with these things because you want folks to be able to find you and your work. That being said, you need to have a master web architecture table for your website. And I guarantee you this is one of the best things that you'll have in development as you progress with having a portfolio over the years. And I do mine using Google Sheets. Why? Because it's online. I don't have to worry about losing this file or anything. So I can just go to my Google Drive, which is all in the cloud and free, by the way. My Drive. I've got a lot of crazy things within this, I guess, my Google Drive. But one of the most important documents that I've got is this table right here. And I just call it Matthew-Bollinger. This is my website. That's it. This is the nuts and bolts of a website. So for example, if I want to transition from an HTML static website to a WordPress site, I'm not going to delete pages. I'm going to keep the same pages. In fact, I'm going to try to keep the same structure within my website. You know why? Because Google has a snapshot of my website. It is following my website. I don't want to shock Google or any other search engines by changing my website web architecture constantly and inconsistently and radically. I want things to be in development, not constantly in reinvention mode. So all of these, every single line here is a page. I have a home page, I have a work page. Remember I was telling you about unpacking the menu to represent years. Here's 2020 to 2024. You know, obviously we're not there yet, but I've got all of these different works that are in sight or in process, and some of them are completed. This green indicates that I've plugged them into my website. Some of these are not complete. That's why they're just kind of there, but I'm even like planning for the works that I'm going to be creating and how I'm going to plug them into my website up here. Up here at the top, I think, so there are different rows and columns that are associated with my pages and the information that would be associated with those pages. It's really important. I have an input status. This one here on the left, menu, page title, H1, the slug or H2, the URL, the image URL, like, you know, whatever I've found to be useful in this process, it's all here in this quote unquote master document for my website, which I wouldn't be surprised if I'm looking at this document 20, 30 years from now, except obviously it'll be more developed and more comprehensive with more work. But page title. This is, and look at how I enter 60 to 70 characters. Well, that's because Google is saying your page title should not exceed 60 to 70 characters. And I found that out because I did my research, like how I had mentioned earlier. Meta description for all of your pages, target SEO keywords, you know, just kind of thinking about keywords. And this gets really crazy. Look at all this. I know it may seem sort of, I mean, me looking at it now, yeah, it seems a little bit crazy, but it's it's part of the process, all right? It's part of the process. So there's the page title, the meta description. I have target SEO keywords for each unique page that I'm plugging in. Why? Because if someone types in these search just words, or yeah, I can hope that Google will direct them to my website and I'll get more traffic. That's the name of the game. That's what I'm trying to do here. Some of these areas are more developed. You know, obviously these are works that are in progress, so they're not done. So a little further down here, the information is more comprehensive. I would strongly advise that you create a Google Sheets document for your web architecture and use some of the suggested, I guess, titles here at the top, you know, menu page, slug URL, and the target SEO keywords. And all of this you'll have to kind of develop on your own. The URL is important because, again, you know, when I create a new website, it's almost sort of a sleight of hand thing. I don't want to shock Google. I want it to be a clean transition to a new website. There's no way I could hold all this information in my head. And that's why I have a document like this that helps me keep track of my website and how it's developing over the years. I remember I was talking about redirects and the 404 page. If you're just constantly changing your web URLs, you're going to get a lot of broken links. You're going to get a lot of 404 errors. And that's really bad for your quote unquote SEO juice. Google does not like that. They want your website to just kind of transition to a new version without radical change. And if you do lose links, if you do lose pages, well, you have to set up a redirect. That's a whole nother ball and chain that we can talk about, but you have to set up redirects that would redirect the old non-existing page to your home page. Okay. And so that means that you don't, your user is not quote unquote running into a wall. I know this is a lot of information for you guys and to maybe review and accept on one video, but just trust me when it's important. And I've made a very abbreviated version of that here that you can kind of get started with. And I think that's good for this video. I'm just looking forward to reviewing your progress on your HTML template and how things are moving forward. Okay, have a good day. Bye.